You know, when I die, I want to die peacefully and in my sleep. Kind of like my grandpa, and not like the other passengers in his car. Over the river and through the woods. That's the way he drove. Hey kids, Adam here. Welcome to the fourth and final part of the Nature of Bass Mix Breakdown series. This is the blue section. This is the final section of the song. It's the solo with the fade out, and everything's water and calm and peaceful, light, airy solo. One of the files is actually called Floating. I think that's where I got that kind of feel from. So let's get in a Reaper, take a look at what we have. All right, so here we are. Before I start, I'm going to play the blue section for you. Now keep in mind on the actual recording, in the master, I did a fade out at the end. So I'll probably simulate that by just pulling down the master fader when it gets there. Take a listen, here you go. All right, so there is the blue section. So when I started this section, I had this first file. I'm going to kind of jump around here a little bit. This was the first loop that I had. And it's called I'm Floating, was the actual name of the wave file when I first brought it in from Acid a million years ago. What I really liked about this was it had that whistle, and it had a drum beat in it. So my first plan was to have this be the only drums in the song. So let's first go through what I did with this. And it's similar to what I've done with others. SSL channel, and I realize now that SSL channel on everything is kind of boring for a mix breakdown, but it's like their one-stop shop for EQ compression and things. I don't know if I'm going to end up using it in mixes. In fact, I've just did a mix for my band where I didn't really use it at all. But I really enjoyed using it on this mix. So again, we have two bumps here, 4 dB bump at 6K, 5 dB bump at 4K. I took out a little bit, about 3 dB at 460, and I didn't bump anything in the bass because I ended up adding drums later on. We'll get to that in a little bit. So we'll just do a before and after, and then I put my standard, I actually put a different reverb on this instead of my room. I put what I have, a long reverb, which has a longer tail on it. So we'll play it before and after. So I really wanted to emphasize those highs and not as much of the drums. And that was because I ended up adding Easy Drummer in after it. So I'm going to look at Easy Drummer right now. This is basically the same thing I did before, same effects. I just did a copy and paste, just with a different drum beat. So if I take off this, just play the... Very simple drum beat, and it does the same thing. There's no fills. It does the same thing through the whole song. So got that out of the way. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch part 3 in the orange section. I go through channel by channel everything I did on these drums. I did the exact same thing for these, with a few exceptions. I actually did more stuff on the orange drums than I did on these, but I won't go through everything because that's 10 minutes wasted that nobody wants to watch. So now that we have that, I want to go through all these channels one by one. The next channel is this, it's called Blue Landing, and this is kind of one of those, I'll play it for you. So it's a airplane landing type, eerie, ethereal mood type thing. And on this, I wanted to bring out a little bit, and I basically just put a compressor on this and pulled out some mids. And I added it to my standard room reverb. So here it is after that. And it's meant to be moody. It's not meant to be a feature part of the song. It's meant to be behind and just adding something in. Next three tracks are the same three, this acid jazz drums with the same exact settings that I went over in both the green and just for a single measure in the purple video. So part 1 and part 2, if you see, you can see what I did there. I'm not going to go over it again. Essentially what it is, all three of these together. Same exact of what I did before. So what you get, if I mute the bass out for this section, here's what we get. And I didn't really want to build like I did in the purple section. I didn't want to build these drums anymore. I figured I would start a kind of an airy thing and then add those acid jazz drums in, keep the regular drums going through the whole thing, and just worry about the two bass parts. So the first bass part is the regular, just it was on my brown bass, was just jazz bass, but it was a fingerstyle part. So here's before all the effects. And I did a kind of cardinal sin here where I used effects to bring up the volume here. I hit it with the same things that I'm hitting everything else with. Kramer HLS, again, 700 Hertz, 2 dB boost. My standard bass EQ that I've just copied and pasted over from everything else. So high pass filter at 44K, low dip at 60 Hertz to get away from the drums, a bump at 121 to boost the bassiness, dip at 307 to kind of get rid of that boxy sound, and then boost at 1.4 and 3.3. And this is a little bit different than everything else because the bass is a little bit different. And then two compressors stacked, both 1176s, both doing about 3 dB of gain reduction, JS saturation, Kramer tape. So after all the effects are on it, here's what it sounds like. Here's the room reverb added, really, really, really low. And then I thought I would add the exciter on to give it a little bit more of the high frequencies. And that's it. Now we get to the solo section. So the solo part. So the solo part, I wanted to try to emulate the solo in the green section. The problem was that was recorded so long ago on completely different equipment, completely different DAW, different plugins. I think I actually recorded that one in Cubase, and I don't even know what plugins I use. So I had no way to go replicate that. That was one of the reasons why I almost recorded it, but I wanted to kind of, it was kind of cool for me internally to say, hey, this is an evolution of bass from 2007 to 2020, which is when I recorded this. So I added a lot of effects on this one to try to get this to sound way. I had a bunch of stuff on my pedal board on the way in that I can't really show you right now, but I had some distortion, I had compression on, and then I added all these effects one by one. I first hit it with the 1073 for a bunch of EQ, and I treated, like in the green, I treated it like a guitar solo. So I'll let it play and I'll kind of add these in one at a time. Like really fuzzy sound. This gives it more definition. This is a Sansamp plugin. It's a free plugin, TSE Audio BOD. And then I added saturation and I added the Abbey Road plates directly on the track to kind of emulate that far away, really far away reverb. And it takes it from a mono track into a stereo reverb. So then I added my standard, a bunch of my standard sends on it, all in the try to get that airiness and that, like, I called it a tin can sound in the first one. Both verbs, a delay, a slap, and an exciter. So I add all those on at once and just play it now. And alone, it doesn't sound great, but when you add it to the whole mix, one cool thing I want to show you is I added a phaser effect in, and I'll zoom in on this part. What I did is I split this, and if you double click on something after you split it, there's this take effects, and you can see this little green icon up here can also get to this. So what I did is I used the GTR Stomp, which is part of Waves, and I added a phaser to it. So if I turn this off, but now if you add the phaser in, you get this really cool effect. And then I did just did a fade, you know, overlap crossfade to make sure it matched in. Without it, it was kind of a harsh ending. So with everything else in, and then the only other thing I did in the song, other than my master fader, which I kind of went through in the first video, is for each of these sections, to get some of the hiss and extra stuff that analog plugins do, I just put a volume automation in on the actual section. So I made a folder for each section, blue, orange, purple, green, and I just automated the volume all the way up to 0 and all the way down to infinity. And so they're not playing and they're not cutting through at all. And I did this, if there's anything overlapping like a single bass note, I did it after the note was over, because as long as there's music playing, you can't hear those hissing and things like that. And then I brought in my standard mastering plugin, added a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression, some more tape saturation, and then did the fade out where I kind of simulated at the beginning of the thing. So that is it. That is the Nature of Bass mix breakdown in 4 parts. I hope you enjoyed this series. I had a lot of fun making it. I had a lot of fun doing the song. It was both frustrating and challenging for sure, trying to get everything figured out. If there's anything you want me to go over in this video over in more detail, let me know. There's a lot of things in here I could probably go over and do a separate video on, just one thing in a 5-minute video or something shorter like that. If you liked the video, please, comment, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, hit the little bell thing. And until next time, have a great week. If you want to support me a little bit more, hit the Buy Me a Coke link down below and you can buy me a Coke. And I can bring out the Coke. I don't think they have Polar Bear Coke anymore, though. I don't know. Do you think they have Polar Bear Coke? Who do you call to ask if they have Polar Bear Coke?